Wireless LAN Weekly, Episode 50.
Welcome to the Wireless LAN Weekly podcast,
bringing together the valuable knowledge of WLAN industry experts, news, and the latest technology developments, tools, and best practices.
A place to educate, inform, entertain, and inspire.
Here is your host,
WLAN veteran, consultant, designer, and teacher,
Keith Parsons.
Hello, my name is Keith Parsons, and I'll be the host of the show today. This is Wireless LAN Weekly, Episode 50. In our main topic, we'll be listening in and talking to Jake Snyder, who's been preparing for his CCIE-W, and he'll give us a little feedback of what he's done and his process and steps to get prepared for that very difficult exam. Our tutorial is on the Contention Process, how wireless devices all have to share and contend for the medium. And then under our WhoIs, we have international guest. His name is Ronald vanKleunen, and hopefully I got his name right there. And he'll share with us a little of where he comes from and how he got to where he is now in Thailand. I had an opportunity to interview him when I was in Bangkok giving a presentation. Now on to the show.
a word for the WLAN Geek Dictionary.
MIC, or Michael, is a message integrity check. A technology that is employed to prevent an attacker from capturing data packets, altering them, and then resending them. The MIC provides a strong mathematical function which the receiver and the transmitter each compute and then compare the same mathematical function. If it doesn't match, the data is assumed to have been tampered with and the packet is dropped.
Wireless LAN Weekly Podcast, your source of education, information, entertainment, and inspiration.
Wireless LAN Weekly podcast main topic with Jake Snyder. Jake, welcome to our podcast. I'm going to ask you a couple questions. We have a little conversation here on what you're doing to prepare for the CCIE-W, both written and the lab you attempted.
I'm still pursuing my CCIE wireless. I've completed my first lab attempt a little over a month ago, and I am preparing for my next attempt on January 9th.
Already have a date? That's great. So what the process been both to prepare for the written? What did you do? And then after you passed the written, what was your study plan to get ready for the lab?
So for the written, it's a lot of reading. I do this for a living, but there's a lot of tiny minutia of detail that they expect you to know and have memorized. There is not a lot of fun reading. It's a lot of deployment guides, configuration guides, reading those things, understanding the concepts, understanding the specifications of everything, from the 802.11 committees up through different technologies and how they work. It's very much the written is an exercise in comprehension of what everything is. And then when you get to the lab, it's more of a how quickly can you configure these things to meet certain requirements.
So to compare, someone who has a CWNA or maybe a CWAP or CWSP, more generic, how would they cross-train for the CCIE-W lab?
So the lab is all about hands-on equipment. It is, it's Cisco's exam, so it's all their equipment. There is no vendor neutrality to it. It is how to do it the Cisco way. It is a lot of hands-on practical, and as I do this in my daily job, it's not so much the how do I go and turn up this piece of equipment. They're going to give you a stack of equipment and say, here's your objectives. In some ways, it is kind of like your day-to-day job where you are given a bunch of requirements to fulfill, and they give you a stack of equipment that is partially configured and tell you to fulfill them. So it's a lot of practice. Speed and efficiency are king. Understanding the questions is very important because they're asking you for a very specific thing, and some of them may sound kind of generic, but they'll put a keyword in there like configure it such that this thing happens. And so understanding that little minute detail of how it's supposed to happen is key, and the only way you really do get to know that is by going in and spending a lot of time behind the CLI or the GUI and configuring all those options and understanding how they interact with each other. I know that some of the training programs refer to some of it as like stupid router tricks, and they really are. There's like stupid little tricks that you do to get some event to happen or to get some behavior to occur. And it's very much, the CW, NA, SP, DP, AP classes are more like the written, where it's a lot of memorization, understanding of concepts, and the lab is how do you go take those concepts and put it into something that works and fulfills a set of requirements.
So what's your study technique and what's your plan?
So my plan is pretty detailed. I take the time between now and the lab. I have a spreadsheet that breaks down what I have to do every day. I study at least 2 hours a day. There are 2 days a week. So right now I do 2 hours first thing in the morning, and then I do Monday nights, Wednesday nights, and all day Sunday are dedicated to lab. I basically have the Fastlane workbooks. I have the IP Expert workbooks, and I have the videos and all of the Cisco configuration examples. I have a breakdown of every morning. I go through 2 or 3 config examples, replicate them in the lab, test, debug, break it, fix it, and then I get up and go to work. And then on those nights that I have lab time, I go home. I'll do maybe a 4-hour mock-up lab, or read a chapter and do some configuration testing and debugging afterwards. And then usually on Sundays I'm doing a 4-hour mock lab or practice lab, or I'm going through those materials, trying to make sure that I can handle whatever they throw at me in the.
Is this all in your home lab?
Some of it through Cisco. As a Cisco partner, my employer has access to some labs in the cloud. They're basically the IP Expert labs, but I would say 90% of it is in my home lab.
So do you have since you have the spreadsheet, do you have a estimate of total number of hours you're going to have invested?
Well, for my first exam attempt, getting through the written and my first attempt, I put in somewhere around 800 hours. My goal is to get another 800 in before my January 9th date. So, you figure 1,600 hours of practice to get there, and hopefully I pass it this time.
What advice would you have for anyone else who wants to become a CCIE-W?
So don't do what I did. Go get at least your CCNP route and switch. I continually kick myself for not doing it right after my CCNA instead of moving into wireless as soon as I did. I should have taken that momentum and finished it. Gotten at least to the NP level before. So you're saying
you need a lot more route switch experience.
Yeah, that was actually one of the things that is kind of surprising, that you'll probably spend a third to half of your time doing routing and switching concepts, and wireless is definitely. I always refer to my title as a wireless network engineer, and that network piece is important because I'm not just a wireless engineer. The networking is very fundamental, especially for Cisco as a networking company. There is a lot of stuff that you need to know, and if from my first attempt, I'll tell you, if I had spent more time in routing and switching, I may have come home with numbers instead of a failure. So, great.
I appreciate your time. Any last advice? And you said January
9th. Nope. Just the only way to do it is to put the hours in. So I never claim to be smarter than anyone. I just might probably put in more effort than they do. So,
and sounds like organized effort. So thanks, Jake, for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Back to basics with Keith.
This tutorial topic on our Wi-Fi basics, we'll be talking about the contention process. I'll be talking about this. It's what we're doing on the podcast, but I strongly recommend that you go and read Marcus Burton's article that's on the CWMP website on this whole contention process. You get a lot more out of it than just listening to me talk about it. But let's get on with the contention process here. Unlike 802.3 Ethernet, which has the ability for clients to talk and listen simultaneously, because they can talk and listen simultaneously, an Ethernet client doesn't have to. It listens to make sure no one's talking, but it doesn't do any fancy stuff to find out if there's colliding, because it will know when a collision happens. It puts something on the wire, someone else does it at the exact same time. I put on 110, I hear 111. I didn't put the third one on, so I heard something I didn't say. Thus I know there's a collision. I do a random back off, the other guy random backs off, we slide back in. So Ethernet, with its collision detection, has randomizing only after a collision. The contention process we're going to be describing now is for wireless. We don't have collision detection. We only have a collision avoidance. So the engineers who developed 802.11 protocol ended up randomizing before we send a frame, meaning every single data frame that goes out on a wireless network has a randomizing beforehand to keep down on collisions. Now we have a whole bunch of ways to make sure that we're not going to collide, but some of them are kind of complex and difficult to talk about. So let's start with the first guy. He's talking, he's already beat the system, he's won, and he's transmitting his data. At the end of the data transmission, he's going to wait for a CIFS, a short interframe space, happens to be 9 microseconds long, and then whoever he sent the frame to will send an ACK. Data, CIFS, ACK. At the end of the ACK, the client says, I sent my data, my receiver received the data, great, we are now done, the ACK is finished. And then we have to have this little window of time. It's called DIFS, Distributed Coordinated Function Interframe Space. It's basically dead air. 12 microseconds of no one talking. Absolutely no one. And if no one talks for 12 microseconds, everyone goes, hey, the line is clear. Let's see if I can get. And let's say there's 2 or 3 devices that all want to talk. They have a frame all queued up, ready to send. They wait the diffs. At the end of the diffs, they all have a frame ready to go, and they now know the line is available to talk on. But instead of Ethernet talking at that point, they will all grab a random number. And the random number pools change depending on type of QoS, but let's just use a pre-QoS answer and say they're going to pull a number from 0 to 31. They each grab a number. I'm lucky, I pull a 1. My friend down the street, Fred, he's pretty unlucky today. He gets a 31. He's not going to go to the lottery today. He's really having a bad lucky day. He pulls a 31, I pull a 1. We then wait. We've already waited 12 microseconds of dead air. Now after I pull a number, I'm going to wait 9 microseconds more, or a slot time, and slot times change depending on the PHY layer that we're on. I wait 9 microseconds. I decrement my counter to 0. I now can talk. No, actually I can't talk. I have to listen and make sure no one else is still talking, doing something called a clear channel assessment. And there's a couple of technical ways to do clear channel assessment, both just raw RF, ambient RF, modulated RF, someone else is in there, etc. And then if no one else is talking, I now can transmit it. At the front of my frame, in my header, I send out a duration ID, which tells everyone how long I'm going to talk. My friend Fred, who decremented from 31 to 30, now hears me transmit. He heard my header, and in the header it said Keith's going to talk for 187 microseconds. And he goes, my name's not Keith. I'm not transmitting, but I'm going to set a timer, a nav timer, network allocation vector, for 187 microseconds, because he knows for that length of time he can't talk. I've got the floor. I continue to send my data. He's now shut up and waiting. I send the data, get a CIFS. They send me an ACK. I'm now done. I might have another frame I want to send. So does Fred. I pull a 3. He's a 30. He's still going to use his same 30 he had last time. Now, eventually, he'll count down, and he'll get down to a 0. So no one's going to get starved out of the queue in transmitting. It just, might take a little longer for him to get to that point. I win again. I listen to my clear channel assessment. When it's clear, I then transmit. I have a virtual nav timer, this timer that Fred's going to turn every time I talk. It makes him shut up for a little while. And eventually, everyone who wants to talk gets a chance by grabbing a random number, counting to 0, and getting their frame out on the wireless. This is why when we get into very high density situations, just the dead air time is a problem. You take Times Square in New York on New Year's Eve, and all the iPhones there, each iPhone is even sending out probe requests every now and then. There's not enough 12 microsecond dead airs to have anyone send anything. So the way the protocol is made, this contention mechanism helps minimize collisions, but it also is a problem in that we have to live within this contention window. Now, we beat it somewhat by going to QoS, and QoS changes the type of slot times we have and the random pools. Think if you wanted to be really crazy and you wanted to win every time, you would just make a random number from 0 to 0. But then you would also be contending with everyone else who had set theirs 0 to 0, and you're running a greater risk of having collisions. Contention window, we transmit, SIFS ACK, dead air. At the end of dead air, we grab a random number, we count down to 0, we check CCA. If we win, we then transmit, and the process happens all over again. Thanks for listening to a tutorial on the contention process. If you have any questions or for more precise details, and not quite with my analogy type, go ahead and look at Marcus Burton's white paper out on the CWNP website. I'll also put a link to it in the show notes. Thanks.
This is the Power Minute with today's podcast special guest.
WHOIs LAN Weekly Podcast interview, WhoIs Ronald vanKleunen. So, tell us about yourself. What's your name? Where do you work? And what do you do?
Hi Keith, my name is Ronald vanKleunen. I work for Globeron. I founded that 10 years ago, based in Singapore. We started off with security business, and now we focus more on wireless training. We started CWNP business in 2005, so 7 years already. And this year is already 10 years celebration or anniversary that we're in business doing wireless. But besides wireless, we also do data center, service-oriented enterprise certification training.
You said you're from Singapore, but I can tell from your accent you're not originally from Singapore.
Right, that's true. Yeah, so I'm actually born in Belgium. I lived there 10 years, then moved on to Netherlands for 18 years, moved to Singapore for 12 years, and now we're actually meeting here at the conference in Bangkok, and I'm actually also 8 years in Bangkok, in parallel with Singapore. But now I moved more to the Bangkok area because of the family.
Oh, your family's Thai?
Yes, yeah.
Well, that's good. How many kids do you have?
Yeah, 2 kids. Yeah, one, I say it. I forgot the English word. Okay, one stepchild, and one own child.
Oh,
so
okay.
one is 11, one is 12, and the other one is 1.5.
Okay, good. So how did you get from the Netherlands into the IT industry?
Yeah, that's a long story. So it started with a computer for my father in 1982. Then I started to program some things, so we talk about that later. And yeah, I got an interest in IT, studied it. I studied on a polytechnic into computer science for telecommunication industry, and then the career track moved into that area. So I started to work for IBM Global Network Services, setting up a modem network throughout the whole European region. And after IBM sold it off to AT&T, I worked for 1 year setting up services over those type of networks. But actually I always wanted to move into Asia Pacific region, because a lot of my friends in Netherlands were also from Asia. And I think I could foresee that the business will go to Asia. And I always wanted to go to Thailand first, but I'm actually very luckily moving to Singapore first as a regional hub. And it's also easier to do business because all the communication is in English language. So in Singapore I started at Sun Microsystems, doing also networking consulting for some large companies. And 2002 there was a recession in Asia, surprisingly, after all the growth. And that's actually the point where I decided to start up the company.
So this started with your first computer. So what was that first computer your father got you?
The first computer was from the US. It was a Texas Instruments TI 994A. And I still bring it along with me. I still have everything operational. The floppy disks, the 1.4 inch floppy disks still are operational. Everything works. And it was one of the first computers with a speed synthesizer built in. Yeah, and everything was 16 KB memory. So that was really nothing. I think you easily can run this large computer on your mobile phone nowadays.
Easily, yeah. So what kind of computer you use today? Are you a Mac or a PC guy?
Yeah, I'm not a Mac guy. The reason why I'm not a Mac guy is because of wireless. In the Apple industry, the phones is all locked, so it is difficult to use some wireless tools on the Mac devices, in my view. So I'm more an Samsung guy, if I call it the brand, since I've been working with a lot of Koreans. I see that all those products are forwards compatible, backwards compatible, sideways compatible, and really reliable. So since I was working at, all my products are almost Korean products.
So what do you use for a laptop?
So a laptop I'm using a Samsung S9. laptop, and it's used to work with all the wireless tools perfectly. Yeah, the wireless protocol analyzers, the site survey analyzer, site survey tools, the spectrum analyzer tools. Everything works, 100%.
Great. If you could go back, 12, 18, 20 years, what would you tell your earlier self? Give him advice.
That's always it's always difficult, like to look back from, was it the right career track, was it the right path you go into. I would not do it differently, because it's just the way how things came together. I think I'm lucky that I could do international business. That was always something I wanted as to do an international internship when I was young, and I never managed to get an international internship. Well, my friends got it, but if I look back now, I was very lucky that I was able to move to a very exciting area in Asia and do business in all countries and travel a lot as well.
So, talk to us about education versus certification. College education, university, compared to like a CWNP.
Right. So, I have an interest in education, or to train people and to build up skill levels, and so to do something back to the communities. So we have an education part, like a polytechnic, a university, and schools. And I think it's important, especially nowadays, that from the beginning, young children, they get connected to IT equipment, so that there is not a digital divide between kids once they grow up. That actually relates also to rural areas, like poor areas in the region, where people even don't have access to those equipment nowadays. I mean, we're talking 2013. And I think it's important that investments need to be done also to preferable using wireless networks to enable those rural areas. That's the fastest way to get those people educated and connected to IT equipment, so that the world gets more connected. So that will be done actually at the universities or school level types. Now, besides that, you have also the professional industry doing certifications, like Certified Wireless Network Professional Program, and that is addressing the companies, the system integrators who are professionally need to install wireless networks in hotels, in shopping malls, in manufacturing plants, and all the different vertical industries. And what I see nowadays, that most of them are still not following a standard. Maybe not have the capabilities as they require in the wireless industry, and the result is that the end user still doesn't have a satisfactory quality wireless network in place. So the customer will complain from, hey, I cannot connect, I get disconnected, it is too slow, the performance not working, oh, there is some security risks. So that are all kind of aspects that the certification program address very well. Unfortunately, there are not so many wireless professionals who can do training. So there is actually a need in the market to how do we teach those skill levels to other people in areas, maybe a train-to-trainer program, or to find a way how we can get this knowledge distributed faster in the different regions.
So in Globeron, how do you leverage just you, who have all the skills, and scale so you can have more people who can be trained rather than just those that Ronald himself can teach?
Right. So currently in Asia, if I talk for Asia Pac, well, actually worldwide there are around 120 CWNEs, Certified Wireless Network Expert levels. And most of them are all based in the US. And that's where I learned my skills as well from the trainers over there. In Europe there are also not so many expert levels, but in Asia there are only 2. Unfortunately, only who are at trainer level. And I think that needs to increase. One of them is we need to have capability levels in local languages. Like if you talk about Japan, Korea, maybe Myanmar is an upcoming country. We need to have trainers who can speak in the local language, because English is of course the international language, but for a lot of people English is not so natural to understand in more depth how wireless works, how wireless networks works together. So
do you hire local trainers now?
Right, so currently we're doing investment. So we have investment in Thailand with one trainer who is known in the security area, who can speak Thai and to deliver training in Thai language. We have a CWE level trainer who is from Myanmar. Okay, we see a growing demand there. There's a trainer in China who can speak Chinese language, but for Korea and Japan we currently don't have a trainer. So we're now setting up our first classes in those countries, and we try to engage a person who can speak English and Japanese, for example, to build up the capability levels. But in reality it is very difficult, and I'm a long time in this industry, it's very difficult to find a wireless expert who is also interested to do training at the same time.
That's definitely true. Definitely true. So, what's your recommended path if someone's new into the industry? How should they go about becoming a wireless engineer?
Right. To get someone at wireless engineer level, the first step will be to start with an introduction training to wireless. At least you need to understand all the different components like antennas, wireless equipment. You need to understand networking, architectures, and then to measure him to see does he have interest in this technology or not. Does he catch it quick enough? Then we take the next step to maybe go to a wireless certification course, and especially the CWNA. Certified Wireless Network Administration, but administration is a little bit the wrong word. It covers much more. It covers RF, antennas, protocol analysis, site survey analysis, spectrum analysis, design, security, and he really gets a very good overview from all those different areas. And in our training classes we got different levels of people attending it, so people who don't understand wireless at all, and people who are very familiar with wireless, and all the feedback is good of all those students. So it is, as a teacher, your job to make sure that you deliver the message clearly and properly to the students, and that everybody can follow it, and to get that first certification level. And then after that certification level, then it is you need to be up to date about all the trends what the wireless vendors put into the market, from newer technologies, newer security risks, and issues that are in the real life implementations, and how do you analyze all those wireless issues, and that takes time. So it is not something you can learn from the books only. It is being there, go into the field, do the hands-on work.
So you said it takes hands-on. Do you recommend that someone has a home lab? Will that help, or do they actually need to be at a production facility?
To get practical experience, there are two ways to look in it. A home lab is, of course, very useful, but also to have a lab in an office. If you're working in an office, that is also very useful, because then you get a different view on how the wireless behaves. In your home lab, you have to deal with your own apartments or your house area, and you might not have so much people around your area, which gives a different behavior of the wireless network. But with your home lab, you can practice it, you can test it, you can test your wireless access point setup, your wireless controller setup. You can set up wireless intrusion prevention systems to analyze alarms and doing attacks to the network without impacting too many other people. The lab in the office or in the enterprise, that gives a little bit more from a performance and trend analysis and better view from how do people come to the office, when start the network to give some problems, if there are too many people at the same time in that particular area on the access point, giving some issues on the network. So you get a little bit different behavior. Still, I think that every vertical market has different ways how to look into the wireless. If you talk about government levels, then maybe security is more important. If you talk about retail market or like shopping malls, then access is a more important item to give. So you need to look a little bit from different angles, how in which area you want to grow and how to analyze and set up a wireless network.
If we look back 5 years, it's kind of tough to guess where we'd be today, and iPhones and smartphones didn't even exist. So, but I'd like you to try to predict what's Wi-Fi going to look like 5 years from now.
Right. So 5 years ago, when we did this training, our customer base was different. So there were really enterprises setting up their own wireless network inside the company. Now, luckily, all those iPads and iPhones and tablets came onto the market because now wireless is everywhere. It's a given. And what you see, the requirements of the organizations is from a nice-to-have wireless network, it becomes business critical. And typically in the hotel sector, you see this, because people come in with the iPad and you cannot plug in a cable into your hotel room into your iPad. So really people expect there is a wireless network. So nobody would have... This has a lot of impact on the business. Where are we from now over 5 years? Well, it is still a competition between the cellular providers who are coming up with 4G and long-term evolution type of technology, and also increasing the speeds on those networks, versus the wired, not the wired side, but more the data type of networks with access points. And there is also a trend moving from 802.11n and now moving to 802.11ac to also build up more speed and capabilities, because human beings are network hungry. So if you give them someone, they take everything, and people want to download videos and want to do voice communications over the wireless networks. So I still see a growing demand for the Wi-Fi technology, for especially maybe high definition television or video imaging over the Wi-Fi networks in the home environments. Voice over wireless and voice over enterprise, I'm not sure if that is going to work in the future. I've seen many implementations in Asia Pac and they did not work so well. So I put some question marks there.
Good, that's great. Do you blog, and do you have a Twitter handle? And what do you think about social media as a way of helping people move their career along?
Yeah, talking about social media, before I go into the blogs and the Twitter, I will start with Facebook. I've not been on Facebook for a very long time, so I'm actually faceless. But we're moving now to Facebook, because in Asia a lot of things works via pictures. And people like to see pictures, people like to visualize things, and it has to deal with the language barriers as well. So we're using visual social media tools to do the marketing. LinkedIn is another one. Now, what we can do from Facebook and LinkedIn, we can actually connect it to the Twitter account. So once we block or Twitter, we actually don't do that on the block and Twitter sites itself. We do that at Facebook and LinkedIn, and then we push it to the Twitter and the blog sites. Similar like marketing letters, we can connect it to those social media communication tools. But actually, I want to see a more integrated social media tools, because there are too many coming up. So we have the Facebooks, we have WhatsApp, Messenger. So I'm running too many applications on my mobile device, and that all need to be integrated in my view.
Okay, so you wake up in the morning. What inspires you to go to work and do what you do?
Yeah, it depends. Because I travel a lot. So if I work from home, or if I need to do a training somewhere in a location. So the first thing is, of course, to see from where is the business. Because we are running a business in the end, so we need to see from how do we build up the business, how do we grow the market in certain areas. So now at the moment we're working with governments, because I foresee that at a government level we need to have a wireless standardization, not only for access to people, because the government has the drive to give access to people, right? To come back to the digital divide issue, to enable people in remote areas as well. So that is the most important thing. And you also see this kind of issue addressed at the ITU, the International Telecommunication Union. So we talk to them about this as well. Secondly, besides access, it is also the cybersecurity, which is an issue. So wireless security is also on the mind of many governments here in the region, because now they enable everybody, but you get maybe terrorist attacks over a wireless network from one country to another country, or a denial of service attack to the network, or website defacements, and so on and so on. And that is also a growing trend. So security becomes also more and more important. From how are we going to analyze all those traffic? How can we do wireless forensics on all those different traffic? And how do we create the evidence to go to the law enforcements in those countries to follow up on those issues?
Do you see security and wireless merging or being more focused and being separated?
Well, wireless is one part of the 10 security domains, because wireless has a lot of areas you can cover. So security, there's a lot of security education in the field already, all addressing all those 10 security domains. Now wireless is growing in that area, so actually the CWSP, the Certified Wireless Security Professional, is in a way a little bit unique, because none of the other security certifications in the market address in so much detail the security concerns you can have on a wireless network. So that's actually where CWSP comes into play. Is it merging? Security always needs to be seen as one end-to-end solution. So we actually developed something called the SOS, and SOS stands for Service-Oriented Security. Because in my view, if an organization puts services on the internet or in the cloud, each of those services is a separate service line. And each service line, that can be, for example, an internet banking service, is delivered to the end users. But this bank maybe offers more services like electronic bill payment services or trade finance services. So it is one company offering those service lines to the end user, but using a shared infrastructure. So that is a shared wireless infrastructure and shared network infrastructure, shared servers, shared databases, and maybe a shared data center as well. So how do you secure each of those different service lines, and how do you grow those service lines without impacting the performance and the availability of those service lines? Because security has a negative impact on the performance because of encryption, decryption, and encoding of all the traffic.
Sounds kind of complex, but then again, that's why we make money, because we can make the complex simple.
Right, so that's why I have a job doing it. Yep.
So what's something special about you? What makes you unique in the world? What are your skills, hobbies? What makes you different than other wireless professionals?
Just at this conference here, I met some ex-colleagues, and they told me, "Oh, there's the wireless hacker." Hacker is actually a negative image in the market, right? But not in the security company. And a hacker is actually the skills and ability to see from how you gain access to something or to achieve something. Now, I don't want to be a black hat hacker or be known as that. So what we do actually, once we do training, we actually have a concept called the Global on White Cap. And I've actually one with me in my bag for you. And the Global on White Cap is actually during our CWNA and CWSP training, we teach you actually all the vulnerabilities of a wireless network and how you can denial of service attacks. But also we teach you how can you mitigate those security risks. How do you get alerted? How do you get an alarm? How do you mitigate those different security risks? So we give you the wrong tools, but the wrong tools are for you to learn and to understand from, okay, this is a security risk, and these are the ways how to stop it. And what is unique about this, because there are almost no security experts here in Asia-Pac. There are, but not so much who understand wireless security that well. And that is also one of the reasons why we have signed this agreement with ITU and Impact. Impact is a cybersecurity organization for the ITU, because they also see this growing demand for mobile and security risks at the different government levels. So they want to work with us together to help and educate the different emergency response centers in those government organizations to learn more about wireless and understand the mitigation techniques.
So do you know what's the difference between a wireless hacker and a wireless penetration tester?
So the difference between a wireless hacker and a wireless penetration tester, so comes actually back to the negative and the positive things. So a wireless hacker is someone who really wants to gain access to a network and then do the wrong things, maybe obtain credit card information or gain access to certain resources at a military organization. So it really depends on the intention of the hacker. The wireless penetration tester, or doing a vulnerability assessment, comes more from the auditing perspective. So if you look to organizational standards like ISO 27001, the Information Security Management Standard, part of that is also wireless auditing. So if an organization implements a wireless network, how do you know that wireless network is secure? Right? You need to do an end-to-end wireless vulnerability assessment. So organizations should engage wireless auditors to do either a black box approach, or a grey box approach, or a white box approach. So the difference between those three is black box means the hacker or the vulnerability assessment person doesn't have any insight how this network has been set up, and just approaches the same way as a wireless hacker does. The grey box approach is a half-half type of environment. The white box approach is the customer gives you the network diagrams, the IP addresses, the brands of the access points they're using in the organization, and with that information, the wireless vulnerability assessment tester can do more targeted attacks to the network, and then document all those audits, and then do a compliancy report to the customer to see from how far are you away from the really secure network setups.
Do you see being an expert in wireless security as an actual job in itself? Or is security just a portion of being a regular wireless engineer who does design as well?
Yeah, I love security. So the need for a wireless security expert is there in my view. But I realized something when I was in 2008. I spoke on the ITU again at the ITU Telecom here in Bangkok. And we were on a cybersecurity panel talking about those issues the governments have in the market. And after that panel, I went to the ministry conference, the different ministries of ICT, talking about their issues in their country. And their issues is not security. The issues is bringing access to the rural areas and enable the people to reduce the digital divide. So I was really thinking, why am I here on a cybersecurity panel? Well, some people in 2008 never have made a telephone call before in their life, or never touched a computer in their life. So there's no need to talk about security. However, I really see that this is a skill needed and very hard to find in the Asia region, at least, with someone who understands wireless intrusion detection and prevention systems, really understands the alarms, and really can analyze if you have a wireless hacker in your network or not. So I think, yes, there is a career path, both from wireless security professionals, CWSP, and wireless auditing perspective as well. Because all those vendors implement a wireless network, but who is auditing and signing off that the network has been implemented securely?
So you're a CWNE plus other certifications. Tell us what you think about the whole CWNP program, and, as you know, basically sell the CWNP program to me.
Awareness, marketing and awareness in APAC. That is key number one. I think CWNP network is great. It's very technically oriented. So we also approach customers from a different angle. So we have also one-day type of seminars or training per vertical market, because each vertical market have different requirements. So on those seminars we can address CIOs, Chief Information Officers, CSOs, Chief Security Officers, to really understand from why they need to send technical people or technical engineers to the CWNP training, because CWNP really addresses technical people. But to sell and to get more brand awareness into the market, we need to talk at management level to create a business justification why they need to invest in their teams to implement, to monitor, to manage wireless networks.
Great. Well, thank you for your time. Is there any last words you want to tell the public about Globeron, yourself, what your plans are in the future?
What we really want to see is really to get standards out in the region. So wireless standardization at government levels. I mentioned that a few times already. Why government level? Because the government levels will push it down to the commercial markets. So once we have it established at that point, the next level will be at the enterprise levels for the different vertical markets to create standardization. So for example, for the military, there is already a wireless security standard where CWNA and CWSP certification is required, but we don't have those standards at the financial verticals and markets. So we need to have a wireless standard for banks, for insurance companies because of all those credit card transactions and other financial transactions going over wireless networks. We need to have standardization for the healthcare because patient information is going over the network. And of course there are frameworks like HIPAA, the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. But I think from a wireless perspective there needs to be more to be done to standardize that. And that implementers follow those standards, and if they don't comply there is a penalty related to it because the guideline is not good enough. If there's no penalty related, then people will not do the investments.
Do you see in Asia Pac, do you see the PCI, the credit card industry, their control? Is it something big? I mean, does everyone need to follow it here, or are they kind of lax on that?
Yeah, that's the PCI DSS, the Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard. That's an interesting one. I actually met the lead of PCI DSS in Australia on a security event. Now the thing is, this is very big in the US, PCI DSS, especially for the retailers, and some of the retailers have been compromised where 40 million credit cards were stolen over this network. So we thought, oh, okay, this will come over to Asia as well, and especially Australia, because Australia is very aligned with the US. We did not see that happening for the wireless compliancy. So yes, for other items, to encrypt the credit card, the magnetic strip on the credit card, to the point of sales terminal device, end-to-end encryption, yes, need to be in place. But a lot of credit card transactions in the region are done using a cellular network and not using point of sales terminals which are connecting over a Wi-Fi network. So what will happen, the PCI DSS auditors, they actually descoped this wireless compliancy from the projects. And I've not seen a lot of business from a wireless PCI DSS compliancy perspective, because there are a lot of vendors, WIPS vendors, wireless intrusion prevention system vendors, who can do automated reporting and putting sensors in all those different retail stores, doing automatic monitoring and to see if you're compliant to PCI DSS for the wireless networks, and automatically give this PCI DSS security report to a chief security officer. So it is really great technology, but the pickup rate in Asia is almost nihil.
Because they're not required to.
Because the auditor descopes it from the PCI DSS standard. Yeah, and there are 9 clauses to be compliant to.
Well, thank you for your time. Appreciate your time spent talking to us in the WHOIS LAN Weekly podcast, and good luck with your future endeavors here in Asia Pac.
Yeah, Keith, it is really a pleasure to meet you in real life, because I've seen so many videos of you online. And it's really a pleasure to meet you here.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
WHOIS LAN Weekly Podcast, your source of education, information, entertainment, and inspiration.
Thanks for listening and staying with us on WHOIS LAN Weekly. We got a chance to talk a little bit about the CCIE-W with Jake Snyder. We talked about the contention process, and we heard from Ron vanKleunen how he got to where he is in Bangkok and how the wireless industry is doing in that part of the world. Thanks for listening, and we'll hear from you next week.
Thank you for listening to the WHOIS LAN Weekly Podcast.
Head to WLANpros.com for this episode's show notes and the latest industry news.
Connect today, WLANpros.com.
A place to